Well, I don't know about you. This could be a little bit embarrassing, but I've usually had to get up in the middle of the night for several decades now. And I can't say that it's because I'm 50 and over the hill. But usually I go back to bed. Years ago, I used to get up and I would just stay up. And that wasn't all that healthy, actually, staying up for a few hours in the middle of the night. But this last week, when we were out camping, we were camping on the West Coast, and got up about 3:30, fumbled around with the tent, finally got it open, and stepped outside, and the sky, oh my goodness. Like, if you haven't been out to the West Coast or somewhere where there's no light pollution for a while, I was just blown away. The Milky Way was right there. I couldn't recognize any constellations. Usually I can recognize some, but there was just so many stars. I couldn't even place the North Star or anything like that. So Zach has just been dying to take pictures over there, and it's 3:30 at night. I'm like, "Hey Zach, are you awake?" Bolts up, and I said, "Grab your camera." So he grabs his camera, and we just went down to the beach, and he took picture after picture, and he about a 30-second exposure, something like that. And if you haven't seen those and you'd like to see those, send me a text. Just some incredible, incredible pictures. He'd take a picture, and then we'd look at it together, and he'd say, "Just one more." And that happened a few times, just one more. And I think both of us, when we got back into bed, fell asleep and spent the rest of the night resting. But what a beautiful, beautiful opportunity that we had. It was stunning, it was glorious, and it was peaceful. It truly was a joy-filled and peaceful time that we shared together. But not too difficult to be peaceful as we're looking up into the heavens at the magnificence that God has created. But what about, for those of you that camp, what about unpacking the car when you get home? Or even just packing it up, especially when it's wet, right? Over in Tofino, we had beautiful weather, but you know, the sun goes down and everything's wet. You get up in the morning and everything's even more wet. And so packing that all up, and you got the unwashed laundry, and you got the lawn that hasn't been mowed, and you're getting ready to go back to work. What does peace look like in those times? What does peace look like in the hecticness of life? What does it look like for those people in Beirut that are still digging out of the rubble? We don't see it on the news anymore, but those people are in a world of pain. The Christian leaders there and those who are believers in Jesus, just trying to figure out, first of all, their own personal life, the people that they've lost, the homes that they've lost, and then, you know, just trying to trust God in that. How do I have peace in a time like this? And then who do I reach out to? And then we've got COVID school coming up. We've got COVID church. Many of us are so much more isolated than we're used to being. What happens when you get into a fender bender in the parking lot? Or worse, a relative is diagnosed with cancer, or you lose your job, or you're trying to sell your house and nothing is happening. Maybe you're in a new job and you're just totally over your head and you're just doing your best to keep up. Could be you're at a time in your life where the bills are just piling up. How do we have peace in those times? How do we have peace in those times? Well, it might sound trite, but the Sunday school answer is the right answer. The peace of Christ. And we're going to be sharing this together over the next number of weeks as we're going to study the book of Colossians together. And this is going to be our theme verse. Let's see if I can pull it up on the screen here. There we go. If you see me glancing over from time to time, I'm looking at the big screen rather than my tiny screen here, just to make sure you guys can see that. So this is a verse from Colossians 3:15, and it's in my own translation. I haven't made any of it up. I've just mashed a few different translations together. The Christian Jewish Bible and the NIV for the most part. So would you join me and say this together out loud, if you would, with me? Let the shalom of Christ our Messiah, be your heart's decision maker, since as parts of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let's say that again, and where it says you were called to peace, let's say we were called to peace, because that's a plural you in the Greek language. So let's say it again. Let the shalom of Christ, our Messiah, be your heart's decision maker, since as parts of one body, we were called to peace, and be thankful. Yeah, let's kind of unpack that verse together a little bit this morning. So question for you, how many of you are retired? Anybody? All right, see a few hands going up there. There's a few of you that are in denial about that. Yeah, there you go. You guys are retired. Well, how many of you are still working to earn a living? See any hands go up? Yeah, a few of you, lots of you. All right. Now, if you're a young person, maybe if you're one of the children with us, you've got your whole working life ahead of you. Now, for those of you that are working, those of you that maybe were retired, or maybe those of you are trying to figure out what am I going to do, have you ever gone to work and you have that feeling in your gut like you wish it could be your last day? Like you just don't want to be there. You're not experiencing peace at all. In fact, the farthest thing from peace. Have any of you ever been there? Have you had a season like that? Maybe you're there right now. I know for some people with school going back and figuring out how work works and working from home and transitioning into working back in the regular space, things are just crazy. And you maybe have that feeling going on inside right now. You want to just call in sick and never go back, or stomp into your boss's office and give your notice, or tell him or her how you're really feeling. Going to work is the farthest thing from that shalom or that peace in your life. So what is shalom? Well, shalom would take a long time to unpack. It's one of those words that in another language that we just can't reduce it to one word. So when we say peace, that's really just a tiny bit of what shalom means. Really, it means a whole life peace. And we could talk about every area of life. It means a whole life peace. It means justice. It means right living. It means a contentment and a trusting. And for us who believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, it means a peace and trusting in Jesus, our Messiah, to give us his peace. As I was getting ready and for this message, I was thinking back 16 years ago, and as I was writing this out, 16 years ago, I was writing out my resignation. And my life was filled with unrest, discouragement. I didn't know it at the time, but also depression, and definitely a lack of peace. And so for the next 2.5 years, we were kind of like Jonah in the belly of the whale, wandering around in the wilderness. And for part of that time, about 10 months, I tried to sell cars and trucks. Mostly I was selling Mustangs, which sell themselves, and the Ford Focus, which kind of sells itself as well too. And every now and then I'd sell a truck, which for salesmen, at least where I worked, was where the money was. And friends, every day I'd get up for work, and I can still feel that feeling that I would feel. I'd iron my shirt and head off to work, and all you need is a good shirt, a tie, and a jacket, and a pen, right? Well, you need a lot more than that to sell cars. But you know what? I'd go in early. I had a Bible at my desk, and I'd open my Bible, and I'd read a section of the Psalms or a proverb or maybe part of the Gospel of John, and I just cried out to God during that time. And most days, being honest, in the middle of all of that pain, he gave me peace. He really did. I was able to have a measure of joy despite being in a job that I had no business being in, trying to sell a product that don't really have much time for. Even my kids can see a car on the street, know exactly what it is, where it's from, what year it is. I have no idea. I can't keep track of that stuff. Just the way my brain works, I don't even know what car I drive. I had no business being there, and I certainly wasn't in a place of peace. Sometimes I'd barely make it through from start to finish in a day. But other days I was able to engage with the customers and with my fellow staff members. When I had a day off, which was few and far between, you'd get one day off a week, but then often you'd have a customer that came in and you'd get the call and you'd need to go and spend time with that customer. But if I had a time off, I'd go down to Has-Beans. Many of you been to Has-Beans across from McDonald's on Rutherford Road there? Little coffee shop, you can get breakfast and lunch. I'd go down there and with my Bible and my notebook and a pen and order one of those cafe mochas that we have. That's like eating a breakfast and lunch, having one of those. Man, they're massive. All that sugar and caffeine, you don't even have to eat for the rest of the day. But I'd go there, drop the kids off at school in the morning, grab my things, and head down there and ride out the morning, reading and meditating and praying. And the 10:30 coffee crowd would come and go, and the lunch crowd would come, and it'd be buzz and busy. And I'd be there right through that time. But friends, I'm not sure that I would have made it through those times without that shalom of our Messiah, without the peace of Christ. He was able to give me that peace in the midst of that storm in my life. Life was hard. It was. There was all kinds of stuff going on emotionally and relationally and personally. As a family, we didn't know what a line of credit was before that, but we became well acquainted. When you get a check for $90 for 2 weeks worth of work, that doesn't pay the bills, doesn't put groceries on the table. It was not an easy time to live through. It was hard. But in all of that, in unique ways, God gave both Kelly and I peace. And you know what? Much of that peace came when we were seeking our relationship with God. When we were spending time in His Word, when we were spending time in relationship with Jesus, our Messiah. So let's go back to that verse one more time. I'm going to share it with you again. Let the shalom of Christ, let the peace of Christ, the whole life peace of Christ, our Messiah. Christ simply means Messiah. It's Greek for the Hebrew word Messiah. Let that whole life peace be your heart's decision maker. And the NIV says, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Let the peace of Christ be your heart's decision maker. Since as members, since as parts of one body, you were called to peace. And then be thankful. Rule in your hearts. I looked up that word, and it's the same word for umpire. I don't know how many games that they played back then, but they had the marathon, and they had the Olympics, and of course they had the games in the Coliseum in Rome. But they had umpires just like we do today, or a referee, if you will. And that's what this verse says. Let that shalom, let that peace be the umpire or the referee in your heart. So when life smacks you in the face, or when your own poor choices are winding up coming back to bite you, or even when you have a hard decision to make, it's a good decision, but it's very difficult. Maybe for you young people, what career should I choose? Where does God want me to go? For any of us, how do I navigate this difficult relationship? Where is it best for me to spend my time? Sometimes there's lots of people around you, and you know that each one of them has a need, but you only have so much capacity. Each one of us has only so much capacity. And so you're praying, God, who do I spend the time with? And you're looking for His peace to make the decision that that you believe he would want you to make. It's at times like these, a challenging time in your life, a difficult decision, that we are called to let the peace of Christ be our heart's decision maker. I was sharing with Evan and Zach the other day about a time in my life where I had a difficult decision. I was just a little bit older than Evan, and it was before Kelly and I met. And I had this really difficult decision I had to make. I don't even remember what it was about anymore. I stayed up all night, and I knew that if I stayed up all night, I'd hear clearly from God, right? Didn't happen. I was disappointed. I wasn't just somewhat disappointed. I was disappointed that I didn't get a clear and decisive answer from God that night. But you know what did happen? Is I began to learn that morning and over the years since, almost 30 years now, when you and I, when we are seeking to be obedient to what God has shown us, when it's our heart's desire to honor God and to be obedient to Him, it's not so much about the decision that we end up making, whether that's to go to trade school or university or to end up in Vancouver or Toronto or to stay in Nanaimo. It's not so much about whether to take a gap year or go to Bible school or work. It's not so much about whether you continue renting or try to purchase a home. It's not so much about the way to go as it is having Christ's peace about it. It's about knowing that you've asked Jesus to be the decision maker, to rule in your heart, to be the referee or to be the umpire. You're seeking Him. You are seeking Him. And that decision that you make, maybe it's two decisions or it's two choices between two good things. And God's desire for you is to trust Him in that and have His peace in that. He's the umpire. He has the final say. Now, if you're watching a hockey game or a basketball game or a football game, whether that's European or American, the referee has the final say, right? Well, today, right, not so much. We've got slow motion and instant replay and multiple camera angles and, there can be a dispute and all that kind of stuff. But we don't have all that in real life. We don't have multiple camera angles of the decision we're supposed to make. We don't have that slow motion. We don't have 20/20 hindsight, right? We've got to trust in someone else who has all of those things. And that's what Jesus has for us in our lives. He's the one that we can trust in to rule or to be the referee or to be our heart's decision maker. When we're putting our confidence in Him, when we're seeking to get our direction from Him, because He knows exactly what He's doing. Now, we all know that referees and umpires are fallible. They get it wrong. But Jesus doesn't get it wrong. He gets it right as He's leading us and as our heart's desire is looking to Him. So where are you at right now? What does shalom look like for you today? What is the peace of Christ ruling in your heart looking like? Are you at a place where you're allowing Him to be your heart's decision maker, wherever it is that you find yourself right now? And I mean that as an individual. I mean that as a couple, if you're married. And I mean that as a family. Where are you at right now in peace in your life? So if you've got your pen and your paper or your device, I want you to write a couple things down. I'll give you guys some time to write these things down. First of all, just write down one or two words that will trigger or that you'll be able to remember a time in the past where you know that God gave you peace in a difficult situation. Don't need to write out the whole story, just one or two words. You remember a time when God gave you peace in a difficult situation? Just write down one or two words. And then secondly, is there something in your life right now where you need God's peace? Is there something in your life right now where you need Jesus Christ, our Messiah, to be your heart's decision maker? So take a moment to write that down. And then I want you to spend just a brief time in prayer, and just have your prayer focus on that last little sentence there in Colossians 3, and be thankful. So if you thought of a time in the past, just express that gratitude and thankfulness to God. And then if there's an area that you need peace in right now, be thankful as well. Thank God in advance for how he's going to give you peace for that, and ask him to do that. You can see my phone number on the screen there. Most of you know my email address, tim@departurebaychurch.ca. Would you send me a little note just sharing what God has put on your heart just now, something that you're grateful for, something that you need peace for? In a few minutes, we're going to break into smaller rooms for those of you that want to stick around for that. And I encourage you, I just encourage you to share with each other what God has done in your life to give you peace. And then if you have the courage just to share an area that you need peace in your life. And then as a small group, maybe one or two of you would pray for one another, just being thankful and praying for peace in whatever areas of your life that you need for that. And as we're sharing in those breakout rooms, just really short, right? Just 60 seconds. If you don't want to share, totally fine. Still, I want to encourage you to join one of those rooms, even if you're not comfortable sharing, that's fine. And just be there. Be a part of the body, right? That's a part of that verse. Since as members of one body, since as parts of one body, we are called to peace. So that leads us to communion this morning. Friends, you and I are one body because Jesus gave his body for us. I mentioned Eucharist in the email. That's not a word that we use very often. Eucharist, in the most simplest sense, means thankful. It means thankfulness, to be thankful. And so when different traditions say we're celebrating the Eucharist, they're meaning we're being grateful. We're being thankful together. We give thanks because Jesus gave up his life for our lives. And as we take a piece of bread, we remember his body for our bodies. And as we take the cup together, we remember his blood poured out for our sins so that we might live for God, so that we might have that peace in the Messiah. And as we live with each other, God's word says that he brought us peace through his blood, which he poured out on the cross. I want you to just take a few moments to reflect on that just now. In Luke's gospel, we read that Jesus took bread, he gave thanks to our Father, and he broke it. And he gave it to them, to his disciples, which today includes us. And he said, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." So let's take together. And then again in Luke's gospel, it says that in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. Friends, let's remember together that his life and his death brought us peace. Well, a little bit emotional watching us take that together. I wish we could be in the same room, but so glad we could share it this way.